Welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Got a good crew joining us again for our Guide CX sponsored webinar with Deepak from Nektar.ai. Deepak, how are you today?
Doing great, doing great. It's pretty bright and sunny outside in Toronto, so doing well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, it's a pleasure to have you here. I know you and I have had plenty of conversations together at different events and over the years, so we're really excited to have you join and lead our conversation today around data-driven automation. So while we're getting everybody in here, I'd love to see everyone that's joined us where you're joining in from. We've had quite a variety in previous events. So the chat's open. Oh, we got another friend from Toronto. You guys probably neighbors, right?
Yeah, I know Atul, yeah. Okay.
We got DC, we got the East Coast, the West Coast, the Middle Coast with North Carolina. North Carolina has some of the nicest people I've ever met. Love the Charlotte area. Um, Very cool.
We have someone from China joining us. That's awesome.
All right. So we appreciate everybody being here again. We want to make sure this is a very interactive day today. This is a wonderful venue for everyone to be able to kind of get questions answered, have conversation together. So the chat is open. We do also have the Q&A that is available. If you have a specific question that you would like Deepak or I to address, please feel free to pop that in there. The chat is a great way to get everybody, answering and chatting. So we're excited to be able to have everybody connected today. So for those of you that have not met Deepak, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself and introduce Nectar AI?
Sure, sure. Thank you so much, firstly, Dave, for hosting me and inviting me for this session. I'm really glad to address you all. My name is Deepak Paripati, based out of in Toronto, in Canada. It's been 5 years or a little more than 5 years for me in Canada. I come from India and immigrated to Canada in 2018. I've been in the customer success domain or in the industry, in the space of customer success since I passed out my MBA back in 2014. Prior to which, I was an engineer working my hands deep into data. I did a lot of data migration projects, did a lot of data enhancement, worked on a lot of data, really coding SQL and all of that. Use that data skills in me, and with my MBA education, really got into consulting, into the consulting world, into the customer success world in 2014, and in the SaaS world, I would say, with how can I use my acquaintance or expertise with data and really drive value for my customers, right? So that's how I got into customer success, and it's been a great journey for the last 10, 11 years in the customer success world. Played different roles, being part of different companies. The one I'm currently working with is Nektar.ai. We are a SaaS startup again in the space of revenue operations and revenue data automation. So if you are looking for a problem to solve in the space of revenue data or revenue data automation, Nektar is the company you should be talking to, and Deepak could be the person who could be helping to solve the problem for you guys.
Right on. And a shameless plug. Guide CX is a very happy Nectar AI customer. So we know there are lots of solutions out there, just like everything. If there's no competition, you're at the wrong dance. But we really appreciate you guys joining. So let's hop into the conversation here. Deepak, I know you put together some slides. You're welcome to share those, but excuse me, talk to us a little about why you've spent a lot of time around this whole world of data and BI and all those kind of things. What does data give you personally in your profession that has opened up doors of automation, helped you be, more efficient in what you're doing and where you're at?
I think you got all the words, the keywords which I will be talking about, honestly. But I think for beginners or starters or people who are experienced in the world of customer success, I think irrespective of the type of the company or the size of the company we work with, one major challenge we as CSMs or CS leaders face is consistency, right? Staying consistent in what work we do and what we drive or derive or deliver value for our customers. Like staying consistent with our processes, staying consistent with our tools and technology, staying consistent with the people, everything put together. Like staying consistent is a big challenge for customer success because customer success handles a lot of things in a typical SaaS company. So it's very hard to stay consistent considering we are also battling a lot of fires out there. On one side, we are talking about renewals. On the other side, we are supporting sales for some upsell, cross-sell conversations. On the other side, we are conducting a business review. So there's a lot we do, and which leads to becoming inconsistent over the time, right? We always come up with great ideas, great initiatives, all of that, but are we consistent in maintaining those and staying on the track? So that's where I think I've always leaned upon to how data can help us stay consistent, and I'll narrate it a little more better through the slides which I have.
Gotcha. No, I love it. You hit on a personal hot topic for me when you said there's always lots of good ideas and there's always a million things that come up. One of my favorite books, The Four Disciplines of Execution, talks exactly about that. Of
Yeah,
you got to focus. You got to be
yeah,
able to focus, but the data also needs to tell you what things should you focus on, what's going
exactly.
to have the impact, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think data can answer a lot, right? Like it's all about how one looks at the data and how we slice and dice the data
Mhm.
and who's looking at the data and what's the timing of who's looking at the data. So to your point, yes, data can tell us a lot. It's about us about uh, what is important, what's that key problem we want to solve using the data for that time, which is what we should be looking for inside the data and uh, trying to build a process or consistent process around it.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's hop in and let people love stories, right? One of our my favorite statements is storytellers rule the world. So let's talk about some stories here.
Yeah.
Let tell us a little bit about some of those problems that the data can solve, or things that if I'm a customer success, if I'm an implementation onboarding leader, let's talk about some of those data stories that can be very impactful.
Yeah. I'll go back to one of my past experiences when I was working with a different company. And one of the challenges we were facing as a onboarding team, part of the customer success org again, was longer time to value or longer time to implementation, let's say, right? And using the data, we try to understand on which part of the onboarding or which part of the implementation are we taking longer again, right? So we went into slicing and dicing it a little to understand which phase exactly are we taking a longer time.
Mhm.
Then we boil down to understand it's the discovery or the business discovery or the process discovery which the consultant is doing after the sale is done to understand more about the customer and the customer's requirements. And that's when we understood that there's a lot of inconsistency in how the discovery is conducted across the organization, how one person is doing versus the other, how they are capturing that information. There was a lot of uh, repetition to what we were asking to the customers, right? The sales had already identified the answers for a lot of questions. The pre-sales had answers. And we again are repeating the same questions, asking the answers for the same questions, which is in a way delivering bad customer experience in the first week itself, right? So using the data, we narrowed down to where the problem was, which
Mhm.
was discovery in that example, in that scenario. And we now had to come up with a solution on how we could do a better discovery or a detailed discovery in such a way that we have everything that's required in the first go or in the first or second go, and at the same time deliver better customer experience to the customer. So we came up with a solution which we then designed, which is consistent across everyone in the customer success org, which will be a standard template, which was again built on based off data. This time, the data we used to build that template was a lot of call recordings, a lot of emails, a lot of meeting notes to understand what's being discussed in these discovery calls by various people. So we gathered all of that and we built a very comprehensive template, which could be either pre-filled or filled during the call or post-filled after the discovery call. But we built a very comprehensive template this time, again using the data, and also try to gamify this entire template, right? Like, how did we gamify is build scoring to each of the questions inside the discovery questionnaire. We gave every section a score, every question a score. What ended up happening is on a scale of 100, let's say on a scorecard of 100, I know that if I have filled 10 questions out of 15, I know I have captured 75% of the questionnaire. But did I capture answers to the right questions or answers to the questions of high weightage, right? It's not just about answering the questions or answering the number of questions, but answering the right questions or questions which are of high importance, right? So we try to gamify it. We try to building the scores. And this scorecard or the discovery scorecard then was public to everyone in the organization. So anyone at any point in time can access this discovery scorecard to know about what a consultant is learning from one customer and what have they been discussing. The sales could come in and chime in some answers if they know of. The pre-sales could come in and chime in if they know some answers for. The CS always had a reference to go back and look at what did we discover, what are we in the process of discovering, what else is pending to discover, right? So that became a golden, I would say, a database of discovery calls or discovery notes, very consistent, very standardized, and also gamifying the entire experience and being transparent both internally and externally. And it was a huge, huge hit, and it really cut down the entire onboarding cycle from 6x to like 2x. So that was a huge
Wow.
win for us.
Wow. I mean, you talk about just cost of time of an employee to,
Yeah.
the available pipeline. That's pretty significant. So it's that I think you hit something that's very interesting is that idea of a fully visible scorecard of sorts, that data visibility, which obviously requires a place to gather that data that you mentioned. I'm curious, be great to have people that are on chatting in. What kind of tools are you guys using today if you are trying to gather and present that to everyone? Who is doing something like that would be very interesting to get what the audience is seeing today. Let's talk about that just a little bit more, because I think that is one of those most important things. Any data in silos becomes very segmented. It's very difficult to do much with, right? It's difficult to make organizational change. So talk to us a little bit about when it comes to data, I think some of your keywords are reliability, efficiency, things like that. Providing that visibility across everybody. I can see, Emily's using Miro. I'm sure there's some others that probably you doing in your CRM or something else. What were you able to do to provide that kind of visibility, that discovery scorecard, those kind of things? How are you doing that?
I think what we ended up doing was a Salesforce native solution in some engineering with Salesforce again. We built a template within Salesforce, which is a CRM back then, which was a source of truth for all our go-to-market teams and team functions, right? So we built something within the opportunity inside the Salesforce, like a questionnaire kind of a thing with scoring on top of it with different types of fields, pick lists or text values or dollar values, which we wanted to capture and group them and section them accordingly. But it was a Salesforce native solution, which we used back then. and along with some custom engineering on top of it, which we use, right? And why Salesforce? Again, we choose to stick to it because it's where all of us were living anyway. So we thought it's good to have it at the same place where all of us were living already.
Okay. All right. So let's take it to the next level because again, I have more Salesforce. I see some, a setup sheet, lots of things. I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated when it comes to the sales side of Guide CX to our onboarding team is that level of visibility between the two. If we have those data points that we can both look at, now
Yeah,
we can have really good conversations, but that means that the conversation needs to happen, right?
exactly.
So help us understand, give us a little bit more of a window into, okay, now we've got data. What do we do with it? How do we implement change? What can we do there?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at it, right? Like one, exactly to your point, what to do with the data, right? Three, uh, what next? Like after we gather the data, we analyze the data. What are we doing? Are we doing anything or just sitting on top of the data? So what we did was we gathered this data after conducting like a comprehensive number of discoveries, like we did 15, 20 discoveries. We were sitting on this data, which then helped us to understand what are some of these uh, prerequisites or questions or steps within the discovery which we could address beforehand, right? So what we did was we went ahead and shared a lot of these insights with our product team or with our product engineering team to automate some of these things which we are doing manually, right? It could be something to do with uh, a configuration, or it could be to do with some kind of a setting, turning on, turning off. Whatever we gathered, we were doing something after we gathered that step. So we were trying to automate those steps from the data to reduce the turnaround time after to use the data, right? So we have the data now, but how were we using the data was all through the manual configuration. I mean, not everything, but we still ended up doing a lot of manual configuration. What we did was, hey, boss, hey, product team, we are looking at this data and we're turning this on and off, we're changing these values. How about as soon as someone fills in this and has how as soon as someone reviews and signs off this, we have these settings turned on or off accordingly so that we cut down on that time and we start delivering the value or we start rolling out the product more faster, right? So that was one big win again on how we use the data, not just from data standpoint, like not just from understanding the data and analyzing the data, but a very proactive measure towards automating the solution or automating the deployment of the solution for the customer.
Okay. So we've got a question from Jeff. I think it's a phenomenal one. So Jeff is saying, there's kind of two issues, right? You've got people with skills that don't have time, and you have people that have time but don't have the skills, essentially. So talk to us, help Jeff and everyone else talk to us about how you bridge the gap to not have the skill deficit negatively impact a startup.
We are talking about implementation skills,
Uh-huh.
Jeff. Is that correct?
Yeah, clarify that if Jeff, if we're missing the question. To me, it's how do you deal with those two different categories of people to work together to make sure that implementation is successful.
So it's a
Yeah.
very interesting question, implementation and the ability to handle it. No, that's great. I think I have personally dealt with this in my previous experiences, like where we had people with a great mindset but no experience, but at the same time, someone with very strong experience, vast experience, but not the right technology, hands-on experience, or not the right mindset, right? So we're talking about entry-level employees are still lacking in skills. Totally fair, but I always come with a mindset where I think mindset is more important than the skill. Do you have that openness to learn, openness to fail, experiment, and quickly learn? So that's what I think is very outstanding when it comes to newbies in the market or anyone in the market out there with that customer empathetic skills or learning skills, usage of GPT today, I think is a big skill that's important.
Mhm.
How to look at data, right? I mean, everyone today knows how to use data with the help of GPT technology. Like if I have an Excel file, I just have to upload and ask ChatGPT a few prompts. But what are the right kind of questions we need to ask ChatGPT, right? What should you prompt the GPT is very important. So if you are not able to put yourself into the customer's shoes or in the customer standpoint, you'll not able to understand how should you look at the data. So I think entry level employees or anyone for that matter, I think the most important skill is, are you able to think from the customer standpoint? Are you able to frame a story or build a story in your mind which you think will be valued by the customer once you deliver? What are the questions that the customer can ask if I present this data? So
Yeah.
I think these are the kind of skills we should be looking at um, when you're hiring an entry level employee, maybe.
Yeah, to bring it back to data, and I appreciate again the question, Jeff. Nobody has a team of all A players that have 10 years experience like that. That's just not a world that any of us live in, right? And so when it comes to that mix of skill level experience, even if I've got experience, but I'm not familiar with your tech stack, the data that is so important to be able to have number one benchmarks. So what is my minimum, and then where do I fit against that? And then two is now back to what you were talking about, Deepak, around the discovery, for example. What are the things that we're missing so that those can create coaching opportunities? Just another aspect
Yeah.
of that data-driven automation of how quickly can leadership identify process and coaching opportunities. And I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated in with our solution with Guide CX is the ability to identify very quickly and easily these are process issues because there is a high level of consistency of delay or people need task owners needing to ask for help versus we have outliers that are people related. So maybe that's hopefully, Jeff, that answers your question. Again, Phil, we're happy to connect for more, but let's go back to that a little bit, Deepak, around benchmarking. I think that's one of those critical things. There's a million data points. We talked about a little bit earlier. What ones do we take a look at? How do we use them? But talk to us a little bit about benchmarking when it comes to process and efficiency, success, like we're talking about here.
I, I think I'll talk about benchmarking from uh, one of the viewpoints or standpoints where, as a customer success professional or as a consulting professional, uh, anytime you go talk to a new customer, they ask this on where do they stand amongst our other customers, right? I think it's a big question I think all of us face generally in the CS world, where the customer is interested to understand on where are they standing in comparison with the other customers of ours, right? How are other customers using our solution? How are other customers using our product? What are the different use cases they are exploring? How are they solving the same problem while this company could be thinking of this particular way to solve a problem? So I think uh, I would want to answer your question about benchmarking from that lens or that viewpoint where customers are interested to understand or customers want to be benchmarked against other customers, right? And that's where I think as a CSM, it's very important to cross learn from each other. Like CSMs, if you're a group of CSMs in an organization, it's very important for each of you to be talking to each other so that you learn on how the other customers are doing, how the other CSMs are solving problems for them, or vice versa. So you have a holistic understanding of all the customers versus not just your book of business, right? So it's good to again capture all of this. So I use currently we use internal something called as a heat map, where we have all the customer accounts on the y-axis We are a small company. We have a manageable book of business today, which can be maintained out of a Google Sheet. But if you're a big organization, something like a tool or a technology could be useful here. But we have all the list of accounts or companies on the y-axis, and we have all the list use cases on the x-axis, right? So we now have mapped each customer to a use case on what have we completed, what is in progress, what is not relevant, what is been in the discussions or not discussed. So we quickly understand a heat map, like a 30 by 10, like a 300 cell heat map to understand on which customers and which use cases have been done, where does each customer stand against the other customers in the same segment or in the same group of business, whatever it is. So that gives me a quick benchmarking analysis on what should be the next thing I can go talk to customer A in relevance with customer B, C, D.
Mhm.
Because customer B, C, D, we have done this, so customer A could be interested about the same thing. So that's where I would answer your question about how data again from use case to customer standpoint can really be helpful in benchmarking, like a heat map analysis or a benchmarking analysis.
Sure. Yeah, and a shameless plug for one of our other amazing strategic partners is Domo. A lot of building out those kind of Domo dashboards, the heat mapping. Again, it's one type of solution, but it's an incredible way to be able to visualize the data
Yeah.
that's available there. Um, so let's go back to, again, the data is great, the data is important, but now how do we utilize the data to actually automate, to uh, improve? Automation's great, but if it's not helping us get better, then it's just spinning wheels, and
Yeah.
it's not really making a big difference. So um, when you guys are consulting and working with customers, in fact, I'll use a specific example we were talking about, this idea of who is consistently not joining meetings, whether that's during implementation, that's when you're having your reoccurring touch points. Talk to us a little about some of those data points that Nektar is able to bubble up and what you would do with it.
Yeah, that's great question, right? So Nectar, again, for starters who have never heard about Nectar, Nectar is a platform which collects a lot of engagement data. The engagement data could be your emails, your meetings, your Zoom meetings, your team meetings on Microsoft Teams, whatever it is. But we are collecting a lot of this data, which is primarily how your go-to-market teams, be it the sales or pre-sales or onboarding teams or the customer success teams, could be engaging with your customers or prospects. All of this engagement data has a lot of raw golden information, right? It has real gold information. It has information about who are you talking to, what are you talking about, how long are you talking about, when did you talk to them, or who engaged on the other side, what are their titles, what are their roles, who on the internal side is engaging. Is it SC joining along with AE, or AE joining along with the CSM, or just the CSM along with the sales leader or the CS leader? So you understand a lot of dynamics from this information, and that's what Nectar collects, process it, and put a perspective to all of this data from the Salesforce standpoint or from the CRM standpoint. So imagine you have an account or an opportunity where you would want to understand who is spending time with whom and on what, right? You want to look back and say, hey, I have 10 close loss deals last quarter. What did we do bad versus I have 6 closed won opportunities? What did we do better there? So in terms of using this engagement data to understand insights from what went correct versus what went wrong could be again something Nectar can unlock for you. So that's how a lot of data which lies inside your email and calendar and all of these meeting tools can be unlocked by Nectar by putting it into a perspective into the sales pipeline health, close loss, close one analysis, deal velocity, buying group intelligence, meeting intelligence to what Dave mentioned on. If you have consistently your VP or economic buyer not joining the meeting, that's like a big red flag. So how would you flag that, and how would you re-engage with the economic buyer to bring them onto the board? So those are the kind of things which Nectar helps our customers with. using the engagement data as a source and by uh, putting it into perspective into the CRM.
Got it. Okay. I'm curious since we're talking about pulling some of these different data points, pulling this together, share with us, you guys, through the chat, what are some of the KPIs that you're top of mind, that you're tracking most closely today? Doesn't mean any one of them is the one, but if it's the one you're tracking, then, I think it'd be interesting to see. So we've got some time to live, critical, right, Corbin? A lot of different ramifications of how you're tracking time to live. What are some other KPIs you guys are sharing out there? While you're popping those in, talk to us a little bit, Deepak, around what you believe are some of those most important data points that a onboarding customer success team should be looking at to drive more efficiency and automation.
I think I'll I'll I think there's definitely a bunch of KPIs that are important in different phases of a customer life cycle, right? Like if you have to start with onboarding as the first stage, I think time to go live, to Corbin's point, is a very, very important metric. But I would also try to add a different version to time to go live. It could also be time to first value, right? We call it TTFV, time to first value. It could be you could take a longer time to go live, but did you try to deliver value even before you go live to your customer? You could be a very enterprise solution, which could be taking 3 months to 6 months to implement, to completely go live. But did you deliver value in the first 3 weeks? And it is possible.
Mhm.
There is a lot of creativity and innovation which we could do in delivering value to the customer even before you go live. It could be in different ways, but that's a very important metric which we could also measure, TTF, as we call it as. And I would also say the post go live customer satisfaction or the enablement, right? On how comfortable is the customer, or what's the confidence level of the customer to use your solution now. You're live, that's great, but is the customer really confident about your solution? What's the level of confidence, right? This could be even after you do an enablement session with them, take them to a tour, detailed tour, and all of that, and then take a survey kind of a thing. But what's your confidence? What's the customer's confidence level of using your solution to really solving their problem? That is a very important metric. So I'll just pause with these three, which are very crucial from onboarding or post go live standpoint. But we could talk about hundreds of other KPIs in the customer life cycle. Yeah.
Okay.
Also look at overall onboarding. Yes.
I was talking to a company one time. I love the way they phrased this. They said, time to first aha.
Aha. Yeah.
That you get the buyers that are saying, hey, yeah, we need this. And then the people using it are going, why do I have to take time to do this? And you get to that first point of them going, I get it.
Exactly.
Huge win, right? So,
Right. I
great.
would just try to connect. It's very important now for the CS to understand what is the aha moment for the customer, right? And that's where I go back to the discovery, where you should have learned it during the discovery on what is that aha moment for the customer. So you work towards uh, delivering that aha moment so that you know what's your first value that you need to deliver, so you can work faster towards keeping your TTFE minimal.
Mhm. Okay. Corbin popped in. Great. So we got a couple of questions. This is the perfect time because I think there's a lot of things, a lot of wheels are turning. So let's answer Corbin's question first, Deepak. So how do you track, quantify a client's confidence in using your solution? Great question.
Great question. Great question. I think Hadley's comment is very aligned to what my answer would be. But what we try to do here is where we try to gamify this experience to understand the customer's confidence. Like I cannot really go with a questionnaire. I cannot go with anything which is offline. While I would love to gain insights onto the customer's confidence level through more of a gamifying this experience. It could be like a 10-15 minute Q&A after the enablement session, or the enablement sessions where I try to ask some questions like a quiz format and see how many of them are answering, how many of them are trying to engage, how many of them are really confident about answering, and the speed to answer. So what I have always learned is to gamify things, be it in form of scorecards, be it in form of quiz formats during live sessions. But again, it's not necessarily that you are able to judge everyone on your customer side, but it at least gives you directionally some confidence for yourself on how confident is the customer. So that's where I'll pause.
Yeah, and Corbin, from what I would say also, so there's data process technology, right? There's all this mix of things. One of the things that I've found from doing implementations in the past and in customer success is give them a almost, you could call it an assignment, right? These are the things that you should be able to do within that first X amount of time, call it the first 30, 60, 90. That also becomes a very easy benchmark to say, okay, did they do it? How much help do they need in doing it? What percentage of the total, license base, consumption model, whatever it is, but you give them their own benchmark and you a benchmark of saying, okay, which one, who's getting there for each.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Corbin, that anything else you want to add to that? I know we've got a couple other questions we want to make sure we get to as well.
Yeah, I'm good. That's fine.
So let's see. Nancy just asked the question, which persona are you asking the comfort question? The executive sponsor, the program lead during implementation, both, what format, survey, etc. So let's unpack that for Nancy a little bit.
Great question again, Nancy. And I think it's different for different group of audience, right? Like I cannot be asking the same set of questions or same kind of format I could be using for my champions or influencers to the economic buyers. Maybe the kind of confidence I need to gain from my executive sponsors or my budget sponsors or economic buyers is totally different from what I should be getting from my influencers or champions, let's say. So it's different. It's definitely different. I need to be understanding who my audience are, what's their persona, exactly to your point, and what is expected out of each of this persona. Like typically in Nektar.ai as a platform, for us, the champion is anyone from the revenue operations team, right? Or the data team as such. So those are our champions, but the influencers could be the sales leaders, the marketing leaders, the CS leaders. The economic buyers are the COOs or the CROs, and today even the CFOs, right? So I have to consider each of these groups separately for each of my type of activity which I would be conducting to gain the customer confidence. So it's definitely a different strategy I need to be adopting with different group of these personas.
Okay, great. I think kind of connect with that. Hadley had commented as well that customer confidence is difficult to determine. We live in a world of very, we're all by nature passive aggressive. Nobody wants to get into a fight. Nobody wants confrontation. Nobody wants to say your baby's ugly. So, they're going to give us all the warm fuzzies because that's what we want to hear, which I think goes back again to, Nancy on, okay, well, if I really want to get to the core of it, if I really want to understand adoption and, perception and those kind of things, how do we ask the questions? What are the ways to gather them? I think that's also, Nancy, you're asking, and maybe Deepak, we can talk about is the format that you ask. So you know who you're asking, you know what you're trying to gather. How do you gather and get
Yeah.
that information?
I mean, there are different creative ways, right? Like one way I have been using Nectar for Nectar internally is how engaging they are during the meetings and how engaging are they over emails. Over the time, which customer of mine is actually asking a lot of questions to the support, right? Like we track our support so much, like who is asking a lot of questions, what kind of questions are they asking, who within the customer is asking questions to us, right? Who is writing to support at Nektar.ai? What's their persona? Who is actually opening our FAQs and reading? So we track the audience on the FAQs page and understand the audience from that. So there are different creative ways on how we can gather these insights on who from the customer is actually interested and trying to build that confidence about our solution. It could be who is engaging during the meetings. It could be who is engaging over emails to support or to the CSM by asking questions, who is landing to the FAQs page, who are again taking on some of our post-enablement surveys, to your point, who are taking some of these assignments to gamify the experience. So it depends on, again, the size of the customer, the group of the personas we are engaging with. Not necessarily that I do everything for all the customers, right? We could not be investing in so much time. Maybe I need to scale down myself in my efforts and initiatives with an SMB and a mid-market versus an enterprise customer. So different ways again, and not every customer geographically also could be aligned to the same thing. An EMEA customer could be refraining from taking on any projects or um, um, kind of assignments offline versus a North American maybe. I don't know, but we need to be cautious about understanding the culture, the kind of sense we are getting from every conversation we are having, and accordingly design this.
All right. So we've talked about consistency, reliability. We've talked about visibility into some of these data points. We've talked about customer sentiment. We've been talking about KPIs we should be looking at. A lot of really, really great nuggets I think we've gone into today. What are the last couple of things that you would impart on the group today that they just can't leave without knowing?
Uh, I think there are three things I always uh, believed in my journey of customer success is the three whys. Always love to do the three why or use that as a framework to learn more in any phase, right? It could be about my customers, it could be about someone I work with, or it could be about a product or a solution or about a problem, whatever it is. I always use a three whys framework. So I always encourage anyone I engage with to use the three whys framework in every aspect of your life. That's one. Number three is data. Uh, Process, and technology, right? These three go hand in hand. So do not let any of these three pillars compensate or fall for each other. So consider all these three very important: data, process, and people. So give equal importance to all these three and take any decisions in your business based on these three. So I would leave with these 2 points, which are of three each.
Nice.